Welcome to the Science of Fiction HFY Galaxy Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from HFY Galaxy Tales, where humanity always finds a way. The cage and the beast. The alien woman stood behind thick glass, arms crossed, eyes narrow. Commander Alria had seen many humans since the war began. But this one was different. He didn't shout or throw things like the others. He didn't smash the walls or growl through the bars. He just sat there, calm and still, in the middle of the cell, watching her every time she passed. To her people, humans were wild creatures, beasts of war, driven by rage and chaos. But this one sat like a monk, not a monster. His name, according to the report, was Mark, a human survivor picked up from a battlefield site on the ruined moon of Setliner. They expected him to scream, to bite, to break his chains. He did none of that. He just waited. Alria didn't trust silence, not from humans. She pressed a button on the glass, speaking calmly through the translator. "Do you understand me, human?" No reply, just his deep brown eyes meeting hers without fear. Another officer walked in, chuckling, still pretending to be civil. "Commander, these things don't talk, they roar." Alria didn't laugh. She had served long enough to know that silence meant something. Sometimes it meant control. Sometimes it meant planning. She watched Mark for days. Each time, he greeted her the same way, by standing up straight and nodding slightly. It was polite, too polite for a beast. She started staying longer near his cell. Observing, he watched her lips, her hands, her expressions, not like prey, like a student. One night, when the hallway was quiet and the ship drifted in deep space, Alria walked alone past his cell. She paused when she heard something faint. A whisper, the sound of words, but not from her tongue. She leaned closer. He was repeating phrases, not in human language, but in hers, ancient Valari, their formal tongue. She stepped back, shocked. No translator was active. He was speaking her language on his own, carefully, correctly. She pressed the voice panel again, her fingers tight around the switch. "Where did you learn that?" she asked sharply. Mark looked up. The side of his face was bruised from a guard's strike. He wiped blood from his lip and answered, in clear Valari, "From you." Her hand froze above the panel. "I've been listening," he said slowly. "I wanted to understand." "Why?" she asked. "You think we're beasts," he replied, "but beasts don't care about words." Alria stared through the glass. For the first time, she saw something that truly scared her. Not violence, not power, understanding. The next morning, she didn't speak of it to anyone. She ordered his food upgraded. More vitamins, more warmth. The guards laughed when she brought it herself, trying to tame the animal. They joked, but the way Mark nodded in thanks made something twist inside her chest. That night, she stayed longer. He told her he'd grown up loving languages, learning accents, mimicking sounds. He didn't know why, it was just natural, he explained. The way she moved, the way her voice rose when commanding, softened when she doubted. She had never noticed it before. "No one has spoken to me like this," she said quietly. "No one's listened to me like you," he answered. The guards were suspicious. One of them, Officer Tiaran, warned her. "You're getting too close." "Commander," he sneered, "you forget what they are." "I don't forget," she replied. Coldly, "I observe." But deep down, her certainty was cracking. The reports had always been clear. Humans were dangerous, emotional, uncontrollable. But this one sat in chains and still chose to learn her language. Still chose respect over rage. Still greeted her with calm. That evening, she returned again. Mark stood the moment she appeared. He placed a hand over his chest, Valera style, and bowed his head. "Your language is beautiful," he said in her native tongue. She stared at him. A long silence filled the space between them. Then, slowly, she spoke. "You're not like the others." And he answered, "Maybe none of us are." The words between worlds. Commander Alria couldn't sleep that cycle. Her mind kept returning to the human in the cage, to his voice, soft and steady, speaking her ancient tongue without a translator. No stumbles, no fumbles, only understanding. How could a being her people called a beast show such grace? She stared at her ceiling, then stood, walked out of her quarters, and returned to the containment wing. He was still awake, sitting in the same position, as if he'd known she would return. "You spoke well," she said through the glass. "Thank you," Mark replied in Valari. "I practiced every day." "Why practice a language you don't expect anyone to hear?" she asked. "Because it matters," he said. Words matter, even when no one listens. Alria folded her arms, watching him closely. No one taught you? She asked. No, he said, just listened to your guards, your scientists. And you? He smiled slightly. You're careful with words, he added. Your voice changes when you're thinking, when you're angry, when you're sad. She narrowed her eyes. You've been studying me. I've been understanding you, he corrected. Alria didn't know why she kept returning each night. At first it was duty, then it became curiosity. Now it felt like something more. Mark never begged for freedom. He never asked for help. He only asked questions, real ones. What do your people dream of? He asked one night. What do you sing to your children? Alria hadn't thought of songs in years. She had no children, only war, but she answered. And he listened, really listened. When she stumbled over emotion, he didn't mock. When she grew quiet, he grew quieter still. The other guards noticed. They whispered behind her back. Commanders bonding with the beast, they laughed. But when one of them tossed a metal tray into Mark's cell and called him a mutt, Alria didn't stay silent. She ordered that guard reassigned. Respect is not weakness, she said, coldly, and words are not weapons, but her voice shook a little, because she knew something had shifted inside her, something real. One evening, she brought a datapad and sat outside the glass. She handed it to him through the food slot. What's this? He asked. Valari poems, she said, translated into your script. Mark's eyes lit up. He read the first one aloud, carefully, respectfully. The soft syllables filled the hallway like a song. For a moment, Alria forgot he was behind glass, forgot he was human. She only saw someone who spoke her language not just with words, but with soul. That night, she found herself standing outside his cell longer than usual. Why do you really do this? She asked finally. What are you hoping for? Mark met her gaze through the glass. To be seen, he said, not as a beast, not as an enemy, just as a person. Alria felt her throat tighten. You are still a prisoner, she reminded him. I know, he said, but even a prisoner can build a bridge. The next cycle, she didn't arrive in uniform. She wore a simple tunic, her hair down, armor left behind. Mark noticed, but said nothing. They sat together in quiet understanding. The translator remained off. They no longer needed it. She asked him questions. He answered gently. Then he asked her a question she wasn't ready for. If we met outside this cell, would you still talk to me? She hesitated, then answered, yes. That night, she stood before her reflection in her quarters, unsure of herself for the first time in years. Was she losing control, or was she finally seeing clearly? He was supposed to be a monster, but he offered poetry. He was supposed to be dangerous, but all he had given her was peace. Maybe the danger wasn't him. Maybe it was what she had been taught to believe. Before she left that night, she pressed her hand gently to the glass. He mirrored it. Their palms didn't touch. But something in their hearts did, and in that silence, across languages, across species, something new began to grow, not fear, but trust. More than a beast, the ship shook violently as alarms blared through the corridors. Red lights flashed on every wall, warning of a full security breach. Commander Alria ran through the hall with a pulse weapon in her hand, heart pounding. A group of captured alien raiders had broken free, causing chaos across the lower decks. Guards were down, systems overloaded, and containment sectors were failing one by one. She reached the hallway where Mark's cell was located on. Her chest tightened. The glass was shattered. His door was wide open, and Mark was gone. She raised her weapon, stepping forward with caution. Then she heard it, a cry for help. Not human, Valari. She rushed to the sound, turning the corner and froze. Mark was there, but not escaping. He was shielding one of her wounded guards with his own body, his hands raised to stop a raider coming from behind. With one motion, Alria fired her weapon and dropped the raider to the ground. Mark turned, breathing hard, blood dripping from a cut on his brow. You stayed? She asked, stunned. He nodded slowly. I couldn't let them die. You couldn't run. She whispered. I couldn't, he said, but I didn't. They helped the wounded guard to safety. Alria didn't order Mark back into a cell. She didn't raise her weapon again. Instead, she walked beside him, quiet, thoughtful. When the emergency was over, the command center reviewed the footage. Every officer who saw it was silent afterward. Even those who once called him a beast said nothing. Later, she met him again, not in chains, not behind glass. He was standing freely, dressed in simple clothes, hands folded calmly. She stepped closer, searching his face. I owe you thanks, She said. You don't, he replied. I only did what I hoped someone would do for me. She nodded slowly. Still, she said. You proved something. What's that? He asked. That the beast, she said, was never you. They walked side by side through the quiet hallway. No weapons, no guards, just words. She told him stories of her childhood. He told her of his home on Earth, the trees, the music, the skies. They laughed softly, gently, like two souls healing from the same war. For once, she saw him not as a prisoner, not as a lesson, but as a man. And maybe, just maybe, he saw her not as a commander, but as someone more. The council called for his transfer weeks later. Standard procedure, they said. But when the shuttle arrived to take him away, Alria stood in the docking bay, arms crossed, face unreadable. Are you going to stop me? He asked, half joking. She stepped forward. No, she said. I'm going with you. Mark blinked. What? I've requested reassignment, she replied. There's too much I don't know about your kind and too much I've learned to ignore. He smiled softly. Are you sure? She nodded. Yes. He held out his hand. She took it, firm, warm, no barriers between them now. As the ship left orbit, Mark looked out the window at the stars. Alria sat beside him, quiet, her eyes on the same stars. You know, he said, for someone who once called us beasts. She glanced sideways. Yes, you turned out to be the most human of all. She smiled, just a little. You taught me how, she whispered, and so. The story of the beast and the commander became something else. Not a tale of war, not a tale of fear, but a beginning of trust, of respect, and of something stronger than any weapon in the galaxy understanding. The end.